There's a story we're all told growing up here. It's about a team that played a half century ago, long before this city became the new title town, USA. These guys were old school. They were misfits and marauders, wreaking havoc on the ice.
Here you see the pyrotechnics.
And becoming gods wherever they went in town. They revolutionized the sport. They defined this city.
If you can't beat them, belt them.
And in the middle of it all, that kid with the number 4 jersey from Parry Sound.
The difference this year is Bobby Orr.
On his way to becoming the greatest to ever play the game.
Shoot it, goal!
Yeah, I said it, and I meant it.
Score, Bobby Orr!
Anyway, we still tell this story here, passing it down from generation to generation. In my case, from grandfather to his grandson, whose first words were Bobby Orr. And Bobby and Espo and Cheesy and Turk, Chief, Hodgie and Harry, they still love to talk about it too. They still love to look at that picture. That's everything in one image, frozen in time above the ice. So now we'll tell you the story, because, well, like I said, it never gets old telling it. This is the tale of the 1970 Boston Bruins. Big, Bad, and Bobby.
First and foremost, you can even put this into perspective over the last 20 years. You have the Patriots winning all the Super Bowls. You have the Red Sox finally winning championships. In the midst of that, the Celtics win a championship, and the Bruins win a Stanley Cup. Boston is always still a hockey team.
Looking back on the past when we still had a chance, we were pawns in a game that we could not win.
The passion in that city for that team, it was omnipresent. It was everywhere. Anybody who grew up in Boston or is from Boston knows that 70 team.
Well, how do you want to play? You want to play with skill, and they could outskill you. You want to fight them, they'd outfight you.
Oh, here we go, wrapping the glove.
The one thing about this city is it fancied itself as a blue-collar city, and this was the perfect team for that.
When Bobby and that Bruins team came along, they just galvanized the whole state.
A standing ovation from this capacity crowd at Boston Garden.
They were just such a bunch of personalities.
Bobby Orr, hockey's most gifted star.
That team just lives on.
But it wasn't always that way. At the start of the 60s, yeah, we had the Celtics dynasty beginning, but baseball and hockey were a whole different story.
The Boston sportscape was kind of like a barren desert. The Red Sox were pathetic jokes.
We didn't think much of ourselves. I know that's hard to believe today because we have all these championships between the Red Sox and the Patriots. We had nothing then.
But don't mistake a lack of success with a lack of passion, because as much as any city in America, Boston loved its hockey team.
They had a very firm fan base. That's when I remember going to my first game and walking to the Garden and seeing that white ice for the first time. It was a dump, but it felt like a palace. For lack of a better word, I would say there was a charm to them, even though they lost.
I remember the story. This is how bad they were. It was a fantasy story, but it was written as if it was the truth, that the Bruins had discovered this lumberjack in northern Quebec, and he stood 4 feet tall and 6 feet wide, which is the dimensions of the net. So nobody's going to score on this guy. That's how bad they were. They were just dying for a savior. And eventually, a kid from Parry Sound, Ontario, starts playing junior hockey for the Oshawa Generals.
You read a great deal about them if you haven't seen them. Bobby Orr was with Oshawa. Now, why did you decide to choose Boston?
Well, I think that Boston is building their team now, and I'd just like to be a part of their building.
Bobby Orr was 14 years old when he signed with the Bruins organization in 1962, and pretty soon after, word got to Boston about the kid defenseman who'd taken over the junior league.
I specifically remember becoming aware of the Bruins when my father and my uncles were talking about he's coming. the savior is coming. As a kid, you're picking up this name, Bobby Orr.
In 1966, at the age of 18, he joined the Bruins, and from his first game in the NHL, has been one of big league hockey's most talked about performances.
When Bobby arrived in 1966, there was a new sense of hope.
Now, with all the publicity that you've had in the papers, do you feel the pressure much?
Oh, I think I could do without it, but I feel that, well, they can write all they want, but all you can do is your best.
I don't know if he felt pressure, but I just loved watching him. I mean, he could skate like the wind.
Bobby Orr coming out of the center.
Bobby Orr was magical. It seemed to me like everybody else was skating and he was flying or gliding or something different. With those end-to-end rushes.
Gets loose. Still going.
I was only 9 or 10 years old, but I knew I had never seen it before.
He'd lead the rush up the ice, but he'd be the first guy back to block a shot.
Takes his shot. Orr stopped it.
He didn't even wear shoulder pads. Has anybody told you that so far? You know he didn't wear shoulder pads, right? He didn't wear shoulder pads.
He was the future. Everybody knew he was the future. The writers, the coaches. He was going to be it.
In that first year, he won the Calder Trophy as the league's outstanding rookie.
But even if Bobby immediately became a star, the team still finished in the cellar.
The year before I showed up, you were in 5th place. Yeah, at the end of my first year, you were in 6th. So Bobby brought a lot to the team at that time.
There was a sense at the end of that season that they were going in the right direction. You could tell objectively that the Bruins were not going to be cellar dwellers much longer.
And at the end of the 1966-67 season, the Bruins made a move that ensured better times were ahead. A blockbuster trade with Chicago to bring Phil Esposito, Ken Hodge, and Fred Stanfield to Boston.
The big thing was that trade was Espo, when Phil Esposito came to town, and Stanfield and Hodge and those guys. And that's when the real transformation took place.
We make a trade, you 3 guys from Chicago, and then, I mean, that was it.
Well, it's just everything.
But here we have good goaltending. Our defense was solid.
Once Bobby showed up, then Phil showed up, you knew it. It was going to happen soon, but now we got to do it.
Milt, after last season you took over as general manager, the club had finished out of the playoffs for 8 years. How did you assess the situation when you took over the job last year?
Well, first of all, when I was asked to be the next general manager, and I said, what do I do? Because it wasn't a very pleasant situation to go into.
Harry Sinden, the coach of that team, he said for years we were kind of the laughingstock of the NHL.
There was a kind of just a loser's mentality, which is nobody's fault, really. It just creeps in.
Sinden had a team that was getting pushed around.
Detroit had introduced forechecking to the league. They had that identity. Of course, Montreal had speed. And even the Rangers, who struggled to make the playoffs like we did, they became known as a pretty smooth passing team. We lacked identity. But we ended up in '67 with some players that give us that identity.
Milt Schmidt's blockbuster trade to get Esposito, Hodge, and Stanfield set up a whole new kind of hope for the Bruins.
Due to a couple of moves, I've got about 10 new faces compared to last year's. Why, this is entirely a different hockey club. We got size, and we got some fellows that did play a winning hockey, and they more or less brought that winning ways along with them.
He shoots, he scores, and it's all tied.
We became a very good team because of that trade. I mean, how put 3 guys like that in your lineup? Oh my God.
It was really a coalescing, and certainly Esposito was a big part of that. They finally had this big center who could score.
Shooting, scoring!
With Esposito, Hodge, and Stanfield, along with Bobby, we now had a nucleus of an excellent team.
Esposito scores! Phil Esposito got the rebound on Bobby Orr.
When they got these guys from Chicago, you hear, and then all of a sudden, like that.
Sanderson going in. Psycho!
The Bruins also had a boost from the 21-year-old rookie they called Turk. Derek Sanderson, who had the perfect style and attitude for the team's new identity.
The best word to describe him was brash.
Breath of fresh air, I'll tell you.
Here we go, Kurt back in Sanderson.
Confidence, I've always had a lot of confidence in myself. A lot of times I've come up short, but I just gonna keep plugging, and if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, then I just gotta work a little bit harder.
He was kind of the disruptor on ice.
I don't know why guys fight the way they do today. Grab over the shoulder, bring a number over the shoulder. That totally takes the right arm out.
Now, Sanderson punching over the head of Matt Pavlik.
He could skate, he could score, he could check. He was kind of a multifaceted player. His teammates immediately took to him, and he was really irreverent kind of guy.
I sat beside him the whole time, and he entertained the hell out of me, I can tell you that.
We usually had Mondays off, and so Monday was boys' night out. Well, they knew what Tuesday and Wednesday would bring when they got back on the ice. I remember Derek saying to me one time when I was putting him through a grueling workout, he says, "Is that all you got?" And then he was right. That's all I had left to me. They had more.
The Bruins were all about having more than the opponents could handle.
Physically, they were big, and they were called the Big Bad Bruins.
Big Bad Bruins.
You know, they call us the Big Bad Bruins, and that was the identity we established.
We had been stepped on in Boston for so many years. I think our players, particularly players that had been through those years, thought it was about time maybe that we delivered a little vendetta ourselves.
Training camp, getting to know each other. Bobby, we were out together after practice, and he said, "Okay, no Bruin's gonna be in a fight alone, ever, again."
And here we go again. Both dropping their gloves.
One for all for one. That was our motto.
I mean, if somebody got in trouble, we'd all jump right in.
You don't always like the guy that you're playing with, but when you're on the ice, I don't give a crap. He's your teammate. You gotta like him. You gotta stick up for him.
That's really like who we were. Everybody protect each other.
Oh, they're healed up pretty good now. I got the stitches out tonight, so I guess I'm gonna live.
You want to play with skill, they get outskilled you. You want to fight them, they outfight you. You're going to get either out-talented or you're going to get beat up.
And Cashman and Harper start to go. Here's that left hand of Cashman. And here comes Bobby Orr. Esposito, shooting goal!
After spending pretty much the entire decade in last place, the new-look Big Bad Bruins was shocking everybody halfway through the 67-68 season, fighting for first.
The NHL standings in the Eastern Division at Boston and Chicago tied for the lead with 45 points. There's Harry Sinden behind the bench. Done an amazing job with his Boston Bruins this year, the team everybody picked for last place.
To Sanderson, goal is all tied up.
Goaltending, which had been a bit of a problem through the 60s, was solved when we had Jerry Cheevers. He had an edge to his play as well.
Kennedy and Cheevers are swinging.
He rhymed right in with the rest of the poem.
I figured that they would do well, but not really as well as we have been doing, let's face it.
I think that team embodied the city of Boston as much as any team has ever embodied the city of Boston.
Left right into Warren. Down he goes.
It wasn't easy. It wasn't pretty. That's how we love it in Boston.
It looked like Boston was setting up for a long-awaited return to the playoffs. But then came a nightmare plot twist. Bobby Orr went down.
When he got hurt, he was very upset because he knew we had a team that could win, and he knew he was a big factor. He didn't want to miss any games. Bobby was the type of player, whether he was hurt or not hurt, he wanted to play.
This all you've got to do, sit around while your team's out on the West Coast?
Well, I'd sure like to go out there with him, I'll tell you.
The leg itself doesn't give you any pain at the moment?
No, it's sort of touch, but I put partial weight on it now.
Do you expect that you'll be skating in, say, 4 or 5 weeks?
I hope so.
The trains which clatter past Boston Garden always end up in Everett. And the Bruins, who play hockey inside, always end up in the cellar. This year, though, some tough guys got off the train here. Now the Bruins have jumped the track and are as dangerous as a diesel on the loose.
Into the top left-hand corner.
By the winter of 1968, there was no mistaking how different these Bruins were from the teams that had come before them, making an all-out push for the playoffs for the first time in nearly a decade.
They really have joined together as a team, and when there's trouble on the ice, I think there's very indicative right there of how they feel about each other.
Everyone on the ice is getting involved. He fired. Go!
Bobby Orr had fought his way back to the lineup after missing 17 games following knee surgery, though the absence wouldn't hurt him come awards time, as he won his first Norris Trophy as the league's top defenseman, while Turk won the Calder Trophy as the top rookie.
Bobby, congratulations. Thing you have in mind now, like maybe most valuable player? Is that what your next goal is?
No, Don, I'm very happy with the awards. Really, next trophy I'd like to use, be able to touch the Stanley Cup.
Bobby and his teammates would get their first shot at the Cup in the spring of '68, with the Bruins finally back in the playoffs.
From the Forum in Montreal, Hockey Night in Canada presents the opening game of the Stanley Cup quarterfinals of the Eastern Division. Tonight, the Boston Bruins meet the Canadiens.
Now they were coming into their own, a pretty darn good hockey team. But even with Orr in his second season,
And the series is underway.
the fact of the matter is the Habs were still the Habs.
Ferguson going in, back to shoots, he scores!
The Canadiens quickly swept the upstart Bruins in 4 games. But next to the frustration, there was absolutely, finally, real hope for the future.
I remember coming back to Montreal. I remember the airport, and there was the fountain, and I was getting a drink, and Harry was standing there. And I said to Harry, we're going to win the Stanley Cup in 3 years.
Phil Esposito's first year in Boston had gone well, but head coach Harry Sinden had a feeling that for the Bruins to raise the cup, his best scorer would have to do even more.
I think he got 36 goals in his first year. I said, 36 goals is not enough for you, Phil. I said, you got to get a lot more goals than that, the way you play. He says, you guys, no matter how many you get, you only want more. And I said, well, you can get more, a lot more.
Picks up the rebound, waiting for the score! Esposito!
The driving force of that team is really Bobby Orr on defense and Phil Esposito on offense.
The pass goes to Esposito. Shoots, he scores!
And Phil used to always say, just give me the puck, I'll score the goals. And he did.
You may be a lover and a fighter, but you love to score goals, I'll tell you that, huh?
Better believe it.
68-69 would be the best season of Esposito's career to that point. Career highs with 49 goals and a league-leading 77 assists, which made Espo the first player in NHL history to surpass 100 points in a season.
The Bruins have been down in the cellar, and then you get him, and he breaks the records. Like, forget it.
It was amazing. And Bobby Orr and him were in a tandem in a power play that was awesome.
Circles behind a shot. Goal!
Espo would cap off his season with a Hart Trophy as the league's MVP.
From the line. Goal!